So the one-sided tests, that relationship between the level of significance and the confidence level in terms of making the same conclusion is a little bit different. You got to think about what is that shaded area in the middle. This is not a huge, in the grand scheme of what we do in this class, this one's not an important one, okay? But it is something that's there. All right, so next
Tossing a coin into the Trevi.
we got to talk about the p-value method. Okay. So last week we talked about the traditional method, and in the traditional method, we ask, is Z in the rejection region? Okay? When we do the p-value method, what we ask is if our p-value is small or if our p-value is big. And our level of significance is our boundary of what is a small p-value versus a large p-value. And if my p-value is less than my alpha, that's when I reject. And if the p-value is greater than alpha, we fail to reject. So let's look at an example. Suppose that a doctor claims that 20% of her patients have annual physicals. A random sample of 50 shows that 12 had physicals. Use alpha equals 5%. And we want to see, is it different from the claim? Okay. So the claim is P equals 0.2. The alternative would be P is not equal to 0.2. Okay, so sketch the sampling distribution. So I've shaded. The last thing we need to do is find those critical values, which are at negative 1.96 and positive 1.96. All right. Now, to find my p-value, you're going to use your calculator to find the p-value. So all right, and this is also a shortcut to finding your test statistic as well, okay? So what you're going to do is hit stat. You're going to arrow over to tests. This menu is where all the calculator shortcuts lie, okay? And you can use this menu for any of the things I ask you to do. So the question is making sure that based on what you're given, picking the right one of these, okay? In this case, we are doing a test on a singular proportion. All right, we have our it's a test because I have hypotheses. Just kind of helping you think through how do you pick, okay? As soon as I have hypotheses, I'm doing a test, not an interval, okay? And each of these hypotheses is about one proportion. So I'm going to choose option 5 in this case, the one proportion z test. Are we good? All right, so go down and pick that one proportion z-test. Next, your calculator is going to ask you for some information. It's going to ask you what's going on in my null hypothesis. So that p sub 0 is what's the p where h is 0 in h0. Is everybody good? And then it's asking you for basically your two values for p hat. And then you highlight which of these signs you have in your alternative hypothesis. Is everybody good? From there, I want you to go ahead and hit calculate. And the first thing it tells you is z. The second thing it tells you is what we call a p-value. Which in this case would be 0.480, okay? All right, now, see where it says z? If I asked you to calculate the test statistic, this is the test statistic. So this is the shortcut to that formula on your formula sheet, okay? So, all right, so if I ask you to do the traditional method, the next thing I'm going to ask you is the test statistic. Hey guys, based off of this, is that test statistic in the rejection region? We shaded our rejection region. Z equal 0.707, that's right about there. Is everybody good? So based off of my Z score, I would fail to reject. And my reasoning would be that 0.707 is less than 1.96. It's not in the rejection region, okay? If I ask you to use the p-value method, you're gonna give me the p-value, and in this case, my p-value is greater than my level, my significance level, which would also make me fail to reject. So, what you want to do is say, which one do I ask you to do to make that conclusion? Okay? Is everybody good? So sometimes I'm going to say use the traditional method. If I say use the traditional method, you're comparing the test statistic to your rejection region. If I ask you to use the p-value method, you're comparing your p-value to alpha. That's how you make those distinctions. We'll have plenty of opportunities for this. All right. Then my conclusion is going to be at 5% significance. You're always going to start with your significant level. We can say it's reasonable that 20%. We're basically saying that it's reasonable that the null hypothesis is true. That 20% of doctors' patients get physicals. In other words, the claim is correct.
Legend states that
All right. All right. So we always start with like these hypotheses, right? Let's say these are my hypotheses. All right. And then what's going to happen? So these are two possible truths, is basically what's happening, right? Now, let's say I take my sample and my sample is 0.81 or 0.76. Is everybody good? We're getting the basic premise. So my hypotheses are about my population. Here's my p-hat. This is the one thing I have, but this comes from a sample. Is it possible that this is not a good representation of my population? In other words, could I take a sample out of here and it's more white than red? Is it possible? And if I did, am I making the right decision from that sample? Probably not. Okay, so it's always possible that the sample you get is not a good sample. So it's possible that you are making a mistake. Is everybody good? Now, so in statistics, we have different types of errors, and you could be making one of these errors, and you didn't do anything wrong. It's just that your random sample is one of the ones that's going to make you make the wrong decision. Is everybody good? Okay, so there's kind of like, we start off with two possible truths. The null is true, or the alternative is true. Okay? And then from there, we either, for either case, we reject or we fail to reject. So in reality, when we run a test, there's actually 4 possible outcomes. The null is true, and I conclude that the null is true. The null is true, and I conclude that the alternative is true. All the way through, yeah? Okay? So if the null hypothesis is true, and I still reject the null hypothesis, I'm rejecting what is true. That's a bad idea, yeah? Okay? So this is what we call a type 1 error. If the null is true and I don't reject the null, I'm making the correct decision. If the alternative is true and I reject the null, I'm concluding the alternative is true. That is also a great decision. And if the alternative is true, but I don't conclude that the alternative is true, if instead I'm concluding it's reasonable that the null is true, that is what we call a type 2 error. Okay? Have you noticed we always write the null hypothesis first and the alternative hypothesis second? Type 1 is when the first hypothesis is true, but you are making the wrong conclusion. Type 2 is when the second hypothesis is true, and you are making the wrong decision. Lastly, to make a connection to something you guys already know, if someone is accused of a crime, they go to trial. What is the number one tenet of the United States justice system in terms of the courts?
Attorney General.
I'm sorry?
Attorney General.
No. The assumption that our courts make, like all courts make. So innocent until proven guilty is what I was going for. Okay? So in that case, my null hypothesis is innocent and my alternative hypothesis is guilty. Yeah? So let's say someone's accused of a crime and they are in fact innocent. The jury still has 2 possible options, right? So if the person is innocent, the jury's first option is to find them not guilty or to find them guilty, right? Is everybody good? One of those is great. Which one is good? The not guilty. This is the correct decision. This is a type 1 error. Okay? Sending an innocent person to jail is a type 1 error in the way our justice system works. Okay? Likewise, if someone is guilty, we either find them not guilty or guilty, right? Right? And so these tests run the exact same way. So type 1 error is the null is true. We conclude alternative is true. Type 2 error, alternative is true. We conclude the null is true. Lastly, my last thing to help you. Type 1 error would be telling Mr. Wapner that he's pregnant. A type 2 error would be telling a very pregnant Mrs. Turner that she is not pregnant. Everybody good? Correct decision would be telling Mrs. Turner at the time that she was pregnant. Correct decision would be telling Mr. Wapner that he is not pregnant. Everybody good? All right. So one of the things I'm going to ask you guys to do is, given a scenario, describe a type 1 and a type 2 error, okay? We want to show that the average cost of tuition at a university is less than $28,000. So the first thing I would do if I were you guys is write hypotheses. Now, we haven't done the test for means yet, but so if I want to show that the average cost is less than $28,000, my hypothesis would be mu is less than $28,000. Since it's strictly less than, that would be my alternative hypothesis, so that the equal to can go into my null hypothesis. Okay? So now, type 1, the null is true, but we conclude the alternative. So the null being true would be that the population mean tuition is more than 20, or it's greater than or equal to $28,000. But we conclude it's less. Again, type 1 goes with the first one being true, and then you're making the wrong conclusion, okay? And then type 2, so I would look at this and say, type 2, this is what's true, but you're describing an error, so you're describing the other one being true. So then it would be the population mean tuition is less than 28,000, but we conclude it's more than 28,000. So we want to show that more than 82% of drivers use their seatbelt. So that's a percentage. So now my null an alternative. This would be P is greater than 0.82. Making this one less than or equal to. Again, so type 1, I describe the null hypothesis as being true, and then I say, but we conclude the other. Okay? Type 2, I describe the alternative hypothesis as being true. So again, you're describing which hypothesis is true first, and then if you're describing an error, there should be a this is true, but, and then you should be making the wrong conclusion. All right. I think we have time to do one example for the means, and then tomorrow, again, I'm trying to get it so that we get done with all the notes, and then you guys can just have class time to plug through everything that you need to plug through. So, all right, so I'll let you guys read this real quick. Pepsi claims that cans are filled to 12 ounces. Suppose we have a sample now of 40 cans with a sample mean of 11.89 ounces and a known population standard deviation of 0.65, alpha equals 10%. And so at the end of all of this, we want to decide, is Pepsi underfilling these cans of pop? So you go and buy a can of pop, it's supposed to have 12 ounces in it. It's labeled it has 12 ounces in it. Are they underselling themselves? That's the premise of this question. So you've got this sample that has a mean of 11.89. That gives us some evidence that the actual mean is not 12. In fact, that it's less than 12. So when my question was about percentages, I use P. When my question is about means, I use mu. All right, now, when we were doing intervals, if we knew sigma, we did a z interval, and if we didn't know sigma, and we only had s, we did a t interval. That same set of rules applies, okay? So one of the things that will be very useful to you is actually taking the time to label this as either a z or a t, because it's the reason I say you should do that is it forces you to think through, am I using a z or a t, okay? At alpha equals 10%, and my alternative is less than, I'm going to shade to the left. And whatever my alpha is, that's my total shading. So this lower 10%, this is my rejection region. And I can figure out what is that boundary for rejection by doing inverse norm. So I'm going to hit stat, I'm going to arrow over to tests because I want to pick, and then I got to pick the appropriate one. I have one value in my hypotheses, correct? So I'm going to pick the one that's only one. So I'm not going to do the 2 sample z-tests. I don't want to pick the proportion z-test because this isn't about proportions. I'm going to pick option 1 and hit enter. In this case, this is like the previous one where you could do it from a list or it could do it from the summary stats. What we have are the summary statistics, so I'm going to choose stats. And I'm going to make it match. Okay, so it's asking what is, again, that sub-0 is saying what is the value you have in the null hypothesis. Okay, then it's asking for sigma. That was given to you in the question. Okay, it's asking for the mean. It's asking for the sample size. It's asking you for what sign is your alternative. Questions on putting this into the calculator. All right, so in this case, we have a p-value of 0.116. And kind of draw for the traditional method. Okay. Okay, so for p-value, we're always looking how does my p-value compare to alpha. In this case, it's bigger than alpha, so I fail to reject. If I look at it from the traditional method, my z-statistic, again, I got both of those from running this test in the calculator, okay? My z-statistic is negative 1.197, which is right here, which I would call not in the rejection region, so that would also make me fail to reject. It's worth noting that my claim would be Pepsi's claim, right? Pepsi's saying, hey, we put enough pop in our cans. Okay. Okay.
Pardon the interruption. This is just a quick reminder for all sophomores that there is a mandatory Bobcat Connections meeting today in the Media Center at lunch. This meeting is mandatory. Sophomores, you do need to attend. Thank you.
Everybody good? Like I said, I'm going to try to finish there's no reason I shouldn't finish the notes tomorrow with some time to spare. Homework's due the Monday you get back, etc. Sam, you probably didn't get the homework.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been thinking about it. I don't know. I mean, I probably.
When was the last time you drove the second period? Today? I went out, I'll ask Charlotte. I don't think any accents, but.
Wow.
I'm just saying, Charlotte will tell me the truth, and I bet it was because you weren't at the time.
Ask her. Stop again.
You want me to ask Charlotte and say, you did drew your head?
Well, you clearly person one to.
No, I'm not going to. I just don't trust him.
I'm sick. That's me too.
Whatever you say, bro.
Oh, yeah, I didn't see it. Oh, wait.
Yeah, I'm not. I already filled it
I
out.
already filled it out.
You fill out a form.
It takes put 3 people's names. Literally 4 seconds.
How would you just walk in and do
Takes a little while.
You
woke up on the wrong
You could have clicked the link and done it right now.
You're just an angry person.
I think it might be the haircut.
It literally is. Guys, why don't you make it? Angry person.
We brought him back to middle school. You too, your haircut brought you back.
Real sweat. Oh, yeah, it's like shaggy. It was like really shaggy.
I think everyone had that at some point. Yeah.
The side part was so tough.
Before the man bun, the side part's elite. Sam had that fresh good.
Everything, yeah.
Chris was mine and everything's going to the side.
Lester, you said I could take tests during silent blocking or one of it this week. I went that.
Show that thing up.
So you just plan on taking 2 class periods.
What a classic.
Well, I thought you said,
That's very classic.
I thought you said it was
Put
gonna
my kid through that. Put my
Yeah.
kid through that.
Yeah,
That'd be
like,
so-
I got my block chart where
Get
the-
a little
Yeah, so- Are you going to be ready to take it Wednesday, 7th period?
when I was pushing the whole thing, I could take it anyway.
Well, you could come in early. Like you could come in like first and second period since you don't have class and take it up
Like on
Thursday or Friday. That gives you more time to get homework done and labs done. Did I send you enough of the videos, I hope? I can't remember if I made the final videos. I might owe you one more video, which if I do, I'll do it 6 periods today.
Okay.
But then I highly recommend you spend tomorrow not doing instruction, but watch the video tonight so that you can spend time doing the labs and doing the homework. Because that's what's gonna prep you for the test more than anything else. So I wanna make sure you're doing that too. And have enough time having had the instruction to get that stuff done.
All right.
Does that seem reasonable?
Yeah. Thanks.
meeting today, I assume? It's only the sophomores, I guess, that have to.
So this connections kid, yeah. And I ordered cluster, so I didn't get it.
I'm gonna go down there and get my lunch. You want me to grab your cluster while I'm down there?
Sure, that would be great. It's just the chili with rice.
Okay.
And I got utensils as well.
Hi, Christy. How are you? Hi, Meister.
Hey,
How are you doing?
okay, yourself?
Good. What's for lunch today?
Cluster truck.
Okay. Cluster truck Mondays, huh?
Joe just didn't want to get a salad, so she decided to order and
Oh, okay.
send it out to people who wanted to.
All right, well, enjoy your lunch. Everything good?
Yeah.
All right. Hey. What's up? I'm good. How you doing today? Good. All right. All right. Have a good one. See ya.
Hi,
Hi.
where is everybody?
I don't know. I thought I would be late.
Good. Well, Dean and Alec won't be here.
Oh, yeah, that's true. So Kenny, Cooper, like,
Jackson will be at the sophomore meeting.
Yeah. Text Kenny at least.
So Landon and I are realizing, Landon, if it's just you, I'm canceling quiz group practice.
Where is everybody?
Well, so,
Oh, there's a bark thing today, huh?
oh,
So that would take
that
out.
would take out everybody, but Miss Cooper and Kenny are, okay,
and then, yeah, maybe we cancel for today.
That works.
fine by me.
All right, I'm sure it'll throw off your whole day, Landon.
I'm gonna borrow your,
Oh, go
and
for it.
I'll take the foil off,
Oh,
of
no.
course, I'm not that dumb.
Don't worry about it.
Although, do you have paper towel? You do, right? 'Cause I'm like, when it's
I
raining,
know.
I would like cover it.
What?
False alarm. I guess only
Oh.
one person has to do the thing.
Should we do?
I have a few.
Okay.
I have two more here that are printed out.
I was gonna say we could do, since it's a smaller group, a more fun set of questions.
Hey, if you have a more fun set, feel free. I don't know if these are more fun than any of the other ones.
Or an easier set for fun.
I have the 2023 Show Me Yours.
And all of you are gonna come. You're all gonna come. 7:30 at Boulevard Presbyterian Church. We're opening for Von Weister.
For who?
Von Weister, I think he's actually a Grandview grad. He has a jazz band that plays every night, every Monday at Boulevard Church. We're playing with them tonight.
Cool.
Tomorrow night we've got Bobby Floyd coming in, which he is literally like one of the greatest living organ players.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that'll be fun for you, for sure, right?
That's very cool.
This is a set of novice questions. You guys ready?
Yeah.
Yeah.
According to,
Hey,
huh?
how easy are they?
According to Herodotus, this empire's founder had his head dunked in a jar of blood by the queen of Massagete Tomyris. This empire crushed the armies of Nabonidus at the Battle of Opis. This empire was ruled by provisional satraps who answered to kings of kings like Cambyses II and Darius I. This empire's first invasion of Greece was defeated at the Battle of Marathon. For 10 points, name this empire ruled by the Achaemenid dynasty of Cyrus the Great.
Ottoman. I'm just guessing random empires now.
Persian.
It is the Persians. In
I don't know
19...
why it took me so long to come up with that. I kind of thought it was that.
Well, I mean, Darius is the big hint,
Yeah.
I think, to the Persians, but...
I'll like put it on there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or Dean. One of the two of them would have had that one, I think. In 1994, thieves stealing this painting left a note reading, "Thanks for the poor security." This painting, the most famous of its painter's series, The Frieze of Life, sees two men walking on a bridge behind the central figure.
Scream.
It is the Scream. A woman who aided in the defeat of this creature is abandoned on Naxos, where she weds Dionysus. Pasiphae gave birth to this creature, also known as Asterion. After mating with a white animal her husband refused to sacrifice.
Centaur.
I'm sorry?
I'm
It's trying to be
trying
the
to think
Minotaur.
what the centaur looks
It's the Minotaur.
Minotaur.
Jean-Baptiste Lamarck stated that this phenomenon was driven by the use or disuse of vital organs.
Oh, evolution.
In this work, a character that passes out is eaten alive by rats. After attacking a bartender, the protagonist of this work reunites with Jack Dwayne in prison, whom he had earlier met while in prison for attacking Phil Connor. A crowd chants, "Chicago will be ours," at the end of this novel. Ona and the Lithuanian Jurgis Rudkis moved to Packingtown in this novel. For 10 points, name this novel exposing the meatpacking industry.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
In a movie centered on this sport, a character nicknamed Caretaker is murdered by Unger. The funeral of Gary Bertier ends one movie about the players of this sport, where Denzel Washington plays Herman Boone. Adam Sandler stars as Paul Crewe in a 2005 remake of a movie about players of this sport,
Basketball?
which features prison inmates called the Mean Machines.
Oh, football.
I figured Chandler would be basketball.
The movie is The Longest Yard.
I don't know if he has any basketball movies. He has multiple.
Yeah, he does.
Does he?
Yeah. I know he's a basketball fan. He had that one where he's like the scout of the European guy.
Oh, yeah.
This senator wrote the 7th of March speech and later declared liberty and union now and forever one and inseparable, in a rebuttal to Senator Robert K. Hayne. With John C. Calhoun and Henry Clay, this senator formed the Great Triumvirate. This man negotiated a border treaty with Lord Ashburton in 1842. For 10 points, name this senator from Massachusetts who shares his name with a famous English language dictionary.
Webster.
It's Daniel Webster. This country's residents use the hashtag #ThisIsMyDam to support the construction of its Grand Renaissance Dam. This country contains Lake Tana, which is the source of the Blue Nile. This country lost its Red Sea coastline after neighboring Eritrea became independent from it, and it comprises the Horn of Africa along with Djibouti and Somalia. For 10 points, name this country. Home to the capital Addis Ababa. This character is given a bowl of sweetened milk and pieces of bread, but dislikes the taste. This character attempts to hide a picture of a lady dressed in fur while his furniture is being taken.
Gregor Samsa.
It is Gregor Samsa.
I'll give you a couple more sentences.
It eventually mentions the title, The Metamorphosis, which, if you know The Metamorphosis, you know Gregor Samsa. Negative RT times the natural log of this value is equal to the change in Gibbs free energy. Comparing a value symbolized Q to this quantity is one way of realizing Le Chatelier's principle. Le Chatelier's? Oh. Le Chatelier. According to the law of mass action, this quantity is a ratio of concentrations taken to the power of their stoichiometric equilibrium.
Oh, yeah, okay.
One figure in this religion is portrayed wearing a tuxedo and a top hat while holding a cigar. The supreme god of this religion, Bondye, can be reached through Loa, such as the death spirit Baron Samedi and the spirit of the crossroads, Papa Legba. For 10 points, name this Haitian syncretic religion, which, contrary to popular belief, does not prominently feature pricking dolls with pins. Voodoo. I feel like are these feeling slightly familiar?
A little bit, yeah. But
Like from last year familiar, not...
yeah, not enough for me to like, I don't know.
The separation of these people's children from their families was detailed in the Bringing Them Home report. National Sorry Day commemorates the mistreatment of these people's stolen generations. These people's myths feature a sandstone rock formation once named for Henry Ayres, Uluru. For 10 points, name these people British explorers met in the outback. The indigenous people was the Aborigines.
Yeah, this is definitely familiar. That question was.
Jean-Jacques Rousseau arranged this work for solo flute, and its last movement utilizes pizzicato strings to depict rain. This work is performed alongside sonnet texts such as "The drunkards have fallen asleep" and includes a viola playing always forte, and to depict a barking dog. This work was included in the composer's Contest Between Invention and Harmony. For 10 points, name this set of 4 violin concertos composed by Antonio Vivaldi.
Four Seasons?
Those are the 4 seasons.
I didn't know Rousseau did any music writing.
Nor did I. This team was called Baseball's Great Experiment in a 2014 Sports Illustrated cover that predicted a future World Series win. While pitching for this team, Framber Valdez.
Astros.
Yeah. Description acceptable for this next one. The kinetic theory of gases assumes that molecules constantly undergo this action with themselves and the walls of their containers.
Collisions.
This thinker blamed social issues on not calling things by their proper names, a problem he resolved with his rectification of names. This mentor of Mencius advocated for archery and calligraphy in his 6 arts, which are essential to becoming a perfect gentleman. This thinker developed 5 kinds of relationships, which are the subject of filial piety. For 10 points, name this ancient Chinese philosopher whose thoughts are collected in the Analects.
Chinese philosopher. Something.
Sun Tzu is not the one they're looking for. Check. Confucius.
Chinese philosopher. Genghis Khan.
There was not the only philosophy of Genghis Khan was kill and take over everything I can. Proponents of this religion from Iona lost a debate at Whitby as chronicled in a history of this religion by Bede. Yeah. Also wrote a biography of a ruler of this religion who created the Doom Book. Hundreds of adherents of this religion were killed by Norsemen during the raid on Lindisfarne. One adherent of this religion apocryphally drove every snake in Ireland into the sea. For 10 points, name this general religion of Alfred the Great and St. Patrick.
Catholicism.
Christianity. I don't know if they would accept Catholicism or not.
I feel like if it's England, it's kind of gotta be. No?
They would separate it from.
Actually, oh.
I can read whatever if you're trying to.
A character in this poem declares, "I fear thee in thy glittering eye," and also describes how slimy things with legs did crawl. This poem features a game of dice between death and life and death to decide the speaker's fate. One character in this poem despairs water, water everywhere, nor any drop to drink, while telling a wedding guest of the misfortunes he suffered for killing an albatross. For 10 points, name this poem about a sailor by Samuel Taylor Coleridge. You'll be upset when I say it.
Water, water everywhere, not a drop to drink. I know the poem. I had to write a paper on it in college. Sadly, can't recall.
The Rime of the Ancient Mariner. This author of True Allegiance became the youngest nationally syndicated columnist in the United States at age 17. This author interviewed Benjamin Netanyahu after a much publicized trip to Israel. In 2010, this author controversially tweeted, "Israelis like to build, Arabs like to bomb crap and live in open sewage." This author popularized the phrase, "Facts don't care about your feelings." For 10 points, name this conservative commentator who co-founded the Daily Wire.
Oh, well, let's see. Who worked at the Daily Wire?
You'll know the name.
Is it? It's not Tucker Carlson, is it?
Mm-mm.
I feel like he worked there for a while. Maybe it was Eric Candace Owens.
It is Ben Shapiro.
Well, he's Jewish.
In 2 dimensions, this is the value of the kissing number, which means that this many congruent circles can be arranged around a central circle without overlapping. This is the smallest perfect number. This is the number of vertices in an octahedron. The polygon with this many sides has interior angles summing to 720 degrees. For 10 points, name this number of sides of a hexagon. 6.
I was trying to work the formula.
You could envision the circle if you work it.
Yeah, well, that's what I was doing. I was like, it's not 4, because 4 would leave gaps. It might be 5, it might be 6, but.
Answer the following. So that was all the toss-ups, and I'm jumping now to bonuses. Answer all of the following about North American cryptids for 10 points each.
North American what?
Cryptids.
Okay.
Cryptids such as axe-handle hound are fearsome critters in the mythos of people with this occupation. One man with this occupation created the Grand Canyon while dragging a giant axe.
Lumberjack?
It is a lumberjack. Matt Moneymaker is a cryptozoologist who features on a show titled For Finding This Hairy Ape-like Cryptid, native to the Pacific Northwest. In Michigan folklore, a cryptid given the name this type of animal man is compared to a werewolf and is said to have a howl that sounds like a human scream. Black versions of these canines are said to be omens of death. Dogman here.
I've actually never heard that. Yeah.
I'm not heard.
Or Black Dog, other than the Led Zeppelin song.
And the Harry Potter books?
Oh.
A paper version of this procedure is commonly used to separate ink. For 10 points each, name this class of techniques which separate a mixture of chemicals using a stationary phase and a mobile phase with different properties. It takes the chromatography. In paper and thin layer chromatography, this quantity is the ratio of the distance moved by a spot divided by the distance moved by the solvent front.
Yeah, it sure is. Is it a letter?
Didn't see.
RF.
Yeah.
The size exclusion form of column chromatography separates molecules by this quantity. This quantity is measured in grams per mole in Daltons.
Density?
No.
Oh, grams per mole.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so that's just like mass.
They specifically
Mass. What is the?
molecular mass is what they want. Kelly, are you done eating?
I sure am.
I'm at set number 3.
Set 3. Okay. Frank Sheeran recounted his supposed murder of a leader of this union in his memoir, I Heard You Paint Houses. For 10 points each, name this union led by Jimmy Hoffa, who mysteriously disappeared in 1975.
UAW.
Teamsters.
Are the Teamsters and UAW the same thing, though?
I don't know. I mean, they don't have it in parentheses or anything as an acceptable answer. So, this man rose to prominence by questioning Hoffa during the McClellan Committee hearings. This man was shot at the Ambassador Hotel 5 years after his brother was shot in Dallas. Yep, it is indeed. Hoffa's disappearance was linked to this organized crime syndicate known as La Cosa Nostra. The Corleone family and The Godfather was partially based on this organization's Genovese family.
Mafia in general?
Yes, the Sicilian mafia. So, but they have a mafia underlying, so I assume just mafia would be fine.
Yep, that's what that means.
Okay. Answer the following following about the characteristics of epic poetry. For 10 points each, epics such as the Luciads and the Odyssey begin in this manner. Horace coined this 3-word term meaning in the middle of things in his Ars Poetica. It's like when it starts in the middle of something.
Is 3 words?
Yep. It's a Latin phrase.
In the middle.
In media res. Where's that one? Epic poetry is also characterized by the frequent use of the Homeric variety of these literary devices. These literary devices differ from metaphors in that they use the words like or as to compare two things. Epic poetry often uses stock ones of these phrases. Examples of these phrases used in the Iliad include rosy-fingered and swift-footed. Figures on that one?
Gerunds.
Adjective, noun pairs.
Gerunds. No, participles.
Epithets.
Oh, okay.
Okay. In one short story by this author, the title question is answered after Hay Holmes' servant digs a grave that is 6 feet long. For 10 points each, name this author of How Much Land Does a Man Need? The title character of another novella by this author dies after falling while hanging curtains. Figures on that?
Twain.
Leo Tolstoy. Leo Tolstoy is from this large transcontinental country. Correct. The title character of this other Tolstoy novel, I feel like we had something similar to this not too long ago, has an affair with Count Vronsky. That title character commits suicide by jumping in front of the train.
Anaconda.
Russian.
Good old Anaconda.
Turkey.
Ladies would throw their garments on stage when this pianist performed. For 10 points each, name this composer who triggered a namesake mania with his virtuoso piano playing. He composed works nicknamed Faux Follets, or maybe Fallets,
Fake birds.
and Mazeppa, part of his transcendental etudes.
I have no idea.
Hans Liszt. Liszt hailed from this country, the namesake of a collection of 19 rhapsodies. He wrote. Other composers from this country include Georgi Ligeti and Bela Bartok.
Lugeski and List and
Czechia.
Yeah, you're in the zone.
Hungry.
Hungary.
Nice.
Liszt composed a set of 4 works in this genre based on the literary Mephistopheles. Johann Strauss II was known as the king of this musical form, usually in 3/4 time.
Waltzes.
Yep. Answer some questions about the poet Rainer Maria Rilke. For 10 points each, Rilke's poem, Let This Darkness Be a Bell Tower, is read in the 2nd season of Euphoria, a show on this network, Taru.
HBO.
HBO, yeah. This artist begins one song from his album, Dawn FM, with Who If I Cried Out Would Hear Me Among the Angels' Order. This artist features on the song Smile with Juice WRLD.
No.
Weekend, it's the weekend. This film concludes with a line from Rilke's Go to the Limits of Your Longing. The title character and Yorkie are members of the Young Volk in this film, directed by Taika Waititi.
Oh, weekend. I didn't hear the question.
It's a film that concludes with a line from Rilke's poem Go to the Limits of Your Longing.
Ragnarok.
Nope.
Jojo Rabbit.
Yeah, it's
Really?
Jojo Rabbit.
I don't know that. I just know it was more.
I didn't know that was. No, I didn't know that would take a.
I did. Louise Aldin, or Aldin, commonly known by this name of Gore, helped expand the Afghanistan-based Ghorid Empire into northern India. For 10 points each, give this name, also held by the founding prophet of Islam.
Muhammad.
Yep. After Muhammad of Ghor was assassinated, his general Qutb al-Din took power in this city, thus beginning the rule of its namesake sultanate. Shah Jahan built the Red Fort in this city north of Agra.
Dubai.
Nope. Got some other Indian cities. You know, like
Delhi.
East Delhi, yeah. Qutb al-Din Aibak commissioned one of these structures in Delhi, which now resides in the Qutb complex. I'm not pronouncing that right. It's Qutb.
One of these structures?
Yeah, it's a structure. After the Ottomans conquered Constantinople, these structures were added to the Hagia Sophia.
Domes.
Yeah, probably domes.
No.
Towers?
Parapets.
Prompt on towers, it says. It's a specific kind.
Parapets.
No. It does start with an M.
Probably more history.
Minaret.
Minarets. In a poem by this poet, the speaker contemplates stopping at lovely, dark, and deep woods, which may represent death. For 10 points each, name this poet of stopping by the woods on a snowy evening and the road not taken.
Robert Frost.
Robert Frost. In Frost's poem, Mending Wall, the speaker's neighbor repeats the phrase, good, these objects make good neighbors, as they both build one of these objects.
Fences.
Fences, indeed.
I've heard about that.
The fences make
Over the
good
summer,
neighbors.
I think.
Yep. In another poem, Frost muses how the world could end with these two substances. A Game of Thrones is the
Iron Ice?
first, first book in a fantasy series part of this. Dynamics of these substances is described by the Navier-Stokes equations.
Fluids.
Yeah, I didn't even get to the question part of that, but it is fluids. Name the substance.
You do stuff with Stokes, but I don't know if it's that Stokes equation calculator.
Alright, here's another one about that. The Navier-Stokes equations are simplified to the Euler equations when this quantity is zero.
Yeah.
The Reynolds number is the ratio of inertial forces to forces described by this quantity, which represents internal friction of a fluid.
Viscosity.
So just do Cooper's fortune.
Stokes' law states that the drag force is equal to 6 pi r times viscosity times this quantity. This quantity is equal to displacement over time and can be measured in meters per second. What is it?
Awesome.
Correct.
It's back over here.
Number 11.
I bet $1,000 Finley.
Voters in this country overwhelmingly rejected a radical constitution which included 388 new articles. For 10 points each, name the South American country led by President Gabriel Boric.
Colombia.
Let's start with a C.
Chile.
Every single Chilean province rejected the proposed new constitution, including the strongest base of support for Boric, the capital city of Chile. Yep. This president was lambasted by Chile for accusing Boric of committing acts of arson. This former president of Brazil controversially called COVID-19 a little flu.
Maduro.
No. Takers on that one? Bolsonaro.
Yeah.
In La Dolce Vita, Marcello and Sylvia make long eye contact after wading into the waters at this site. For 10 points each, name this site where Nicola Salvi designed statues of abundance and salubrity, which flank the central statue of Oceanus. Place that we've done on the trip is a site where you can wade into the water.
Because my p-value is smaller than that, I'm going to reject. Now, in order for my p-value to, what the p-value really does, it says, hey, my sample, so if this were my sample at 2.6, which is my, which is the z-score of my sample, my test statistic, that p-value is basically the probability you get that sample. Okay? So in the probability you get that sample, assuming that the null hypothesis is the true hypothesis. So the basic logic here is if the actual mean was 80, the probability we could get that sample mean is 0.47%. Is less than 1%, yeah? So that tells us that underlying assumption of that null hypothesis is a pretty crummy assumption, okay? So p-value method, if I ask you to justify why you're rejecting, you're going to reject because the p-value is smaller than alpha, okay? So technically, the p-value, the answer to this first question is p equals 0.0047, and the why we're rejecting is that that value is smaller than 2%. As long as you have it somewhere on the page, I'll probably be pretty. But what I'll need to see somewhere is the p-value being smaller than the alpha. Like I need that comparison, or I need to see the z-statistic compared to the rejection region, one of those two things. But I don't care if you answer that question here versus here, it's fine. Okay? Questions? All right, for this next one, y'all. What I'd like us to do is we're going to do this a little bit at a time. Can you guys write your hypotheses on your own, please? Just do the hypothesis step. And once you've written your hypotheses, can you check up with mine and see how we did? All right. Next, I want you to do this next step of sketching the sampling distribution, shading the rejection region, and finding the critical value. Again, check your sampling distribution against mine. Any questions about where we're shading or finding the critical value? All right, next, using your calculator, go ahead and find the test statistic and the p-value. All right. How we doing? Now this one feels a little bit weird to me because having that p-value is very, very big, right? Okay, and normally we've been looking for my p-value is smaller than that significance level, that alpha. And this one is definitely bigger than 5%. Okay? And my 2.75 is, a lot bigger than the negative 1.645. In other words, not in the rejection region. Now, how come these values are so weird, right? Remember, we're looking for, does our sample give us evidence that the null hypothesis couldn't happen? Okay? My null hypothesis with the at least, the greater than or equal to, my sample is evidence that the null hypothesis is true. It's not evidence that the null hypothesis is wrong. That's why my p-value is so big. Okay? So, in this case, we're definitely failing to reject. Whether you say from the test statistic not being in the rejection region or the p-value being so large, we have evidence that the null hypothesis is true, not evidence that the null hypothesis is false. Okay? So then we can say at 5% significance, we can support the biologist's claim that mice weigh more than 17 or more than 15 grams. Okay. All right, so now this one Let's see what all we have. The magazine reports that the average student works over winter break is 32 hours a week. We want to decide different from. So that makes me say the mean is 32 or the mean is not equal to 32, because different from is not greater than is not less than. Okay, using a 10% significance level, and all we have is the sample data. Is everybody with me? So I can look at that sample data and say my sample size is 6. That's not bad. Okay. If we wanted to, we could find that mean and the standard deviation of the sample, right? Okay. But I don't have sigma. So the minute all I have is the standard deviation of my sample, that's when I switch and have to do a t distribution instead. So my sampling distribution, if I don't know sigma and its means, I have to draw a t distribution. And I highly, highly encourage you to label it with a t. And when the minute I draw it as a t, instead of writing out that my standard deviation is equal to 1, I got to write out my degrees of freedom. What is my degrees of freedom in this case? How do I calculate degrees of freedom? My sample size, it's always my sample size minus 1. So in this case, my degrees of freedom will be 5. We're going to shade the exact same way. So how much do I want to shade total? 10%. My alternative hypothesis is two-sided, so that means I got to shade both tails. And to find those critical values, I now have to use inverse t. But you guys, inverse t only thinks left. So what is an area that I know is left? This one. You're going to give it the area on the left. Is everybody with me? And it only does left. Everybody good? All right, now, if I go in my calculator, I'm going to go back again to that tests menu. This time, because this is t, a t distribution, I'm going to pick t-test instead of z-test. All right, now, in this case, I don't know the summary stats. I only know the data. Is everybody with me? So what I need to do before I can run that test is I got to tell my calculator the data. So go to stat, hit edit, and type your list of raw data into L1 so that your calculator knows what data to do this test on. All right, so now once you have the data in, you're going to, again, go back to stat, arrow over to tests, We're going to choose that option t-test. This time, because what we have is the raw data, you're going to highlight data at the top. For your mu0, you're putting in, again, what is the mean I have listed in the null hypothesis, 32. Where is your data? And what is your alternative? Do we have any questions? Any calculator questions? And again, this time our t statistic is really, really close to the center, right? Okay, well, why is that? Well, my x bar in this case is 30.8, which I can get now. I can't see that from this list of numbers, right? But my sample being 30.8, that's not very far. That's not great evidence that the null hypothesis is wrong, because it's pretty close. It's not going to be perfect. Is everybody good? We seeing why? Because it's important that we understand kind of not just the plug and chug, but also the why does our answer feel maybe wrong or that it doesn't match. Well, let's look at the evidence and see what we got. Okay. So if my t is negative 0.156, am I rejecting or failing to reject? I'm sorry? We would fail because it's that t statistic, in this case I would say, is not in the rejection region. So if it is in the rejection region, it's that in those shaded tails, that's when we reject. Those are the crazy samples that would suggest. And what would it take for us to be in these tails? It might be like, oh, your sample means like, over here might be like 38. Right? That's evidence that the alternative hypothesis is good evidence that the alternative is correct. Okay? All right. So at 10% significance, we can support the magazine's claim which, by the way, was in the null. All right, here's what we're going to do next. Y'all, I'm going to give you 15 minutes to do this question on your own. Okay? And in those, I'm assuming this question should not take 15 minutes. You guys catch my drift there? Okay? So within that 15 minutes, you can also have a break. Okay? What I'd like to do as we go over this, I want to kind of put you guys into my perspective. Like when I'm checking your work, what am I looking for? Right? So for the hypotheses, I'm going to look for, do you have both of them and have you stated where the claim is? When it comes to the question where you're sketching your sampling distribution, I'm going to look for, did you label which sampling distribution, Z or T? Do you have the mean of 0? And either the degrees of freedom or the standard deviation. Is it shaded appropriately and have you labeled the shading? And that critical value. There's a lot going on in that picture, yes? And all of those things are important details to me.
Don't we know the standard deviation?
What standard deviation do we know? When we look at this, it's saying the sample reveals a mean with a standard deviation. So that 0.56 isn't describing the population, it's describing the sample of 20. So what we have is S, not sigma. Okay? There's no question. That is how I'm going to try and trick you. Like, you got to make sure when you're like decoding all the information given to you that you're decoding it with the that's part of the things you need to know is important that you're looking for. Okay? All right. The test statistic is pretty straightforward. The reject or fail to reject and why. Again, it depends. Here I said test statistic. Find the test statistic, so you're going to compare that to your critical value. If it were a p-value, you would compare that to the p-value to alpha. Okay? If you specifically just said negative 15.97 is in the rejection region, that would be fine. Okay? But if you just give me the t-statistic or you just circle reject and somewhere on the page I can't tell how you made the decision to reject or fail to reject, that is a problem. Okay? In your conclusions, I'm going to look for, did you state the significance level? Did you make a decision about the claim? Are you supporting the claim or rejecting the claim? And then in this particular case, we're talking about population mean of hours worked. So you got to make sure that full context is in there. Those are all the things I would be looking for as we approach these questions. Everybody good? All right. I do have one more example. Do you guys feel like you need one more example of this, or do you feel like you got it? We'll do it. Okay. You want to show the mean car length is 9 feet. That means my null is going to be mu equals 9. My alternative would be mu not equal to 9. You take a sample of 34 cars, the average being 8.8. And again, that standard deviation, this is describing the sample of 34 cars. It's not describing the population. It is an S. And I don't give you an alpha. Remember, the rule of thumb is if I don't give you alpha, you use alpha equals 0.05. Okay. What kind of distribution am I doing here? Z or T? T. I made that decision because what I have is S, not sigma. Okay? Oh, that should be not equal to for my alternative. Yeah, they shouldn't both be the same. Where am I shading? Both sides. Lovely. And how much am I shading on each side? Look at you. You still have to find that critical value. I go to my calculator. I choose inverse T. Uh-oh. I forgot something, didn't I? Because my calculator is currently asking me for something that I don't have communicated on my page, right? It's asking me for the area. That I've got communicated. What else does it ask for if we do inverse T? The degrees of freedom, right? What is my degrees of freedom? 33. Great. So the minute I see I'm being asked for something that I haven't communicated, that the calculator will remind you of what you need to do. Okay? For kicks, guys, And to practice it, instead of doing the test statistic, I would like you to calculate the p-value. Just so we get practice using both methods. Now, y'all, there's a cheat code to this. Am I rejecting or failing to reject here? If you don't remember the p-value method, I can still look at my calculator and see my t-statistic, right? Am I going to know if you can't remember greater than or less than? Like if you know that your sample's right there, because it's the t is negative 0.88, that'll remind you that you reject. So that would make me fail to reject. So I'm going to put greater than 0.5. Like you should know, you can make the right decision using either method because you're getting both of the numbers right here, right? They all come out at the same time. All right, and that can help you remember when that you reject when the p-value is lower than alpha versus greater than alpha, okay? So here we would say at 5% significance. We're not rejecting that null hypothesis, right? So we can support the claim. That the population mean car length is 9 feet. All right. Everybody good? All right. So for this next part, guys, if you want to draw this just so that you always have it out on a piece of scrap paper, I've got plenty of scrap paper up here. I know that there's not blank space on the back of your packet. I'm going to kind of take you through everything in units 7 and 8. There's a lot of decision making that you have to do. If you, so I'm going to kind of take you through kind of how my checklist on how I make my decisions, okay? So the very first thing I would ask myself is, that is scrap paper, you can use that. The first thing I would ask myself is my question about proportions or is it about means? Okay? Then I'm going to say, are we trying to estimate? Or are we testing, or is there a claim? Okay? If I'm trying to make an estimate, I'm going to do the one prop z int in my calculator. It will be z. Everything with confidence or with proportions is automatically z. Okay? if you're doing that z interval, okay, your p hat plus your error is the upper end of your interval. That can help you find the margin of error if I ask you to find the margin of error instead of just, right? Okay? If you have to find sample size, the equation you're going to use, and I just want to make sure I put it all the way in there correctly. Everybody good? All right. If you're dealing with means, the first thing I'm going to want to know is, is the information that you have the population standard deviation, or do you have the sample standard deviation? Because that's going to tell you then, here, if it's sigma, you use z, and if it's s, you use t. Then you've got the whole estimate claim.
For the mean, should we put the X bar next to it since we're busy for proportions, or?
Well, the means, it's not automatic. Z is what kind of test you're doing,
Got it.
right? So with means, you have to go another step to decide what kind of test you're doing, okay? And the okay. Now your estimate, if you know sigma, will be the one you put in your calculator. You're just going to pick z interval. Okay, or t interval. The claim, if you're testing a claim, it'll be z test, t test. This is just telling what you pick in the calculator, yeah? Okay?
And we'll need to memorize this for the test.
I'm not giving you this on the test, correct? Like, you're going to need to know. What you get on the test is what is on your formula sheet. This is to help you study. This is providing a study document for you guys.
Okay, got it.
If you have to do the sample mean plus your error is, again, your upper, so that can help you if I ask you to calculate just that margin of error. Or you can use your formula sheet because the margin of error formula is on your formula sheet. But if you're using that calculator shortcut, this is the easiest way to get to that margin of error. Okay? And likewise, the sample size for means is n equals... A couple of you guys in your homework use the means formula or the proportions formula for means instead of the means formula. So you want to make sure you're asking yourself, which one am I dealing with first, so that you're using the right equations. Okay? All right. So you won't have to find sample size for a t interval because you need to know the sample size in order to run a t interval. Like you can't find the margin of error without knowing the sample size because you need those degrees of freedom, okay? So some reminders for t, your degrees of freedom is equal to n minus 1. And then the only other thing that I might, if I were you guys, make sure you're keeping on top of is type 1 and type 2 error, because there will be a question about those on the test, okay? All right, you have the rest of class today to work on homework. As we go through, so the assignments you have, again, the